Hello, students. We have already gone through the chapter Mother's Day. We have read the text. We have gone from phrase to phrase and word to word, from line to line. So now let us reflect on what we think about this story. As we all know that it is based on the plight of women. Actually, it's probably just as representing the condition of women in contemporary society. And J.B. Priestley, so no doubt about it, has wonderfully presented the plight of women in this chapter. And I just talk about the theme of the play. So the mother, Mrs. Pearson, as usually the most neglected person in the family, who puts in twice the labor and gets no wages or thanks for it. As you have seen, the treatment received from Doris Farrell, her husband, Mr. Pearson, they have been just treating her like a slave. They just consider them as a dirt, as passing orders and just being thankless and thoughtless all the times. Mrs. Pearson, one such ordinary mother, but who has an extraordinary friend. Extraordinary friend. You can know that Mrs. Fitzgerald. She thinks from a new approach, from a new point of view, and she has got some power of magic spell. So has an extraordinary friend who believes husbands, sons, daughters should be taking notice of wives and mothers. Of course, if these people are not going to take care of all these mothers, all these females of the family, who else? And not giving them orders and treating them like dirt. They should be given their proper weightage in the family. We can't be thankless and thoughtless towards a mother in the family, and that is what that we have to reflect upon. Though we also did the summary part when I just went through the chapter in the first video, and the same summary is being given in this slide also. You can just go through it, but the most important part is the characters. Once again, now we have thoroughly gone through the characters. We know how they have been just playing their roles in the play, so we must be in a better condition to know about these characters. And as I already told you, Mrs. Pearson is the central character, and she is very loving, of course, caring mother. And one thing more, that she appears to be a timid and confused lady. She is never, before she interchanges personality with Mrs. Fitzgerald, and she is in her 40s, as we all know, and she is a devoted housewife, enjoys serving her husband and children. She's but ignored and made to work throughout the day by her family members, and in spite of their ill treatment, neglect, and exploitation, and she loves them all. In fact, for that she endures everything without any murmur or protest. Hardly we have seen that she has protested against anything done by any of her family members, and we feel sympathy for her. Really, we feel sorry for her, and we wish her to be a little more assertive. However, Mrs. Fitzgerald, once again a very dominating character in the story, brings about a change in personality. As we all know, they interchange their personalities with the effect of that magic spell cast by Mrs. Fitzgerald herself, and she helps her to become more assertive and dominating at the end. Towards the end, you might have seen how she was smoking, how she was, just doing all those things which all the time was a talk of the family, and how she was turning her husband Doris Cyril with her changed behavior. And if we talk about Mrs. Fitzgerald, and definitely she is in sharp contrast with Mrs. Pearson, and she is very smart, experienced also, and she knows some magic that she learned in the East, and she is heavier and has a strong and sinister personality. Sinister, just evil looking, or just looking like that she is going to damage or to hurt someone. And she is liberated, strong and dominated and bold. She smokes and play cards, and has deep voice, has got the accent Irish, and she is also quite firm, resolute, result oriented also. She can anticipate the things, we can say, because before interchanging personality with Mrs. Pearson, she already foresaw what was going to happen in the family, and she sets all the spoilt members of Mrs. Pearson's family right. She set the things right for Mrs. Pearson in the family. So once again, a very strong character. Doris, the daughter, and Doris is the daughter of Mrs. Pearson. She is a pretty girl in her early 20s, and what is wrong with her that she looks pleasant, but she is a spoiled child. She has got a pleasing personality, but she is spoiled, and she makes her mother run after her all the time, and she gives order to her. Remember, ironing the silk. She gives order to her as if Mrs. Pearson were the servant in the house. She asked her mother to iron her yellow silk. You know how she was commanding her mother, Mrs. Pearson. She expects tea to be served to her when she comes from her office or some working place in the evening. But she always thinks of her and her boyfriend, Charlie. But she is so selfish that she is hardly thinking of anything that is outside her and Charlie's interest. And now coming to her brother Cyril, son. And Cyril is the masculine counterpart, as we have already read it. There's a masculine counterpart. He's the brother to Doris, and he's also spoiled like his sister. And he is in the habit of treating his mother very casually, like Doris does. And he asks if tea is ready. When Mrs. Pearson says no, he angrily answers back, "Why not?" No, he considers it to be his right to pass orders even to his mother. So that is something the writer takes care in this story. Perhaps it is representing all the conditions in the contemporary society. That's why it also marked the Mother's Day chapter also marked. I think we just go back into the history, go down the memory lane in 1914. It was officially marked as Mother's Day. It was nationally celebrated in America. So then he orders, "Did you put my things out?" So he makes his mother run all the time doing one thing or the other. So they are the characters, and we can also talk of Mr. Pearson, husband, but as we all know, he is also like Doris and Cyril, hardly bothered about the plight and you can say the sadness of his wife. Is going out frequently after just leaving the home, coming very late back, but he has hardly bothered about Mrs. Pearson, though he has been mocked at the club where he goes usually. But perhaps he is so he's so stupid that he is unable to just make out that what the people are looking at in what manner. But ultimately when Mrs. Pearson does this thing for her husband, just he becomes musing. He thinks of it. He also confirms it from Cyril. So that is also a marking point in the character of Mr. Pearson, that he was unaware of many things which were happening around in his life. So just I think that now the story must be very clear to all of you. So just go through this video once or twice or whenever you need a recapitulation. Oh, thank you very much.